Welcome to Satsang. Today we're going to explore the hidden key to transformation. You know, when we follow the spiritual path, we go through 3 stages. The first stage is called a doing. We have to do. You know, what meditation technique shall I learn? What kind of prayer? How do we pray to God? How do we, do chanting? What is the best chants? What is the best whatever? And that's part of the process, and it's okay. It serves a purpose, but it doesn't give us enlightenment. It doesn't give us awakening, because it's still a doing. And then we enter another level, and it's called an undoing, because after all, true spirituality is undoing. It's not doing. And this becomes release, allowing, letting go, and so on and on, which is fine. Okay? But then there is the third one. And the third one is called seeing. And this one you don't need to do anything but to see. And to see what is as it actually is. So today, if you bear with this video, try to watch it all in one lump, because in a little while, so that you have momentum as you watch, keep watching, because we're going to do an exploration of how we actually start to see deeper and deeper, and yet in a very simple, way. Okay. Now, one thing that helps us to see clearly, to begin to see, is that everything that happens to us we take personally. And when you take something personally, you're blind. You're blind not physically, visually, but blind to your own perception, because you see things in your own way, in your conditioned way, and you think that this is the way it is. Okay? So there is a saying which is made up of 5 words, which I really love. And it's this way: you are what you see. Now listen to those words, please. You are what you see. I had a woman, and she read my book, Hidden in Plain Sight. And this was on Skype, and she said to me, Burt, she said, after reading your book, now everything is very clear, and I've got no problems, nothing. Since I finished it, I feel so good. I'm on a high. I'm very, very clear. And I said, oh, that's great. That's wonderful. I always say that anyway, because I want to encourage people. and I said, that's great. I said, tell me a little bit more. And then she said, after a while, she said, it's a pity that not more people can see clearly like I'm seeing now. For example, she said, I have a son-in-law, and he is a mess. He is, doesn't understand, and he's difficult, blah, blah, blah. And after she talked a while for him, I said, what you're doing now, isn't that a problem? You said you have no problem. So I said, isn't that a problem? She said, no, that's his problem, not mine. I said, but if you're seeing it, isn't that yours? So what we're doing here is to see that you are what you see. Therefore, what you see is what you see. This means it is yours. Now, if we can understand that much, as we keep on moving deeper and deeper, we will see that the greatest spiritual living is the ability to see. In fact, what we call forgiveness is not really, it's a paradox. Forgiveness is not something you do. Forgiveness is a form of seeing. Seeing that in your natural state, when you actually look at it beyond the personal, you'll find that you're really a beautiful, innocent being. And when you start seeing that, now that's forgiveness. You see? And that begins the true wonder of growth, which is, of course, we call it transformation. Now, in the years that I've been not only doing hypnotherapy, but also in the years of writing so many replies to emails, I have found through experience, and my own too, that there are two great blocks to seeing because of making the personality so strong. And these two are the following. And we have to cover these in order to be able to see clearly as we go on. Okay, one is called avoidance, and the other one is called roller coaster. Okay, so one is avoidance and the other one is roller coaster. Now let's talk about avoidance. Now, avoidance is such a lack of seeing that all suffering comes from it. A study was made by a psychologist about what makes people end up like a bag lady or a street person or becoming, you know, totally without hope, almost like feeling no good, etc., etc. And it says it's all because of they avoid or they escape from communicating, escape from what they are feeling, because they're trying to protect who they think they are. Let's talk about avoidance in the office, avoidance in the home, avoidance in relationship, in marriage, and avoidance in private. Okay? Let's take the office, for example. It starts very simple. You go to the office, and then you find there's someone you just don't like for some reason. It could be the boss, it could be an office mate, whatever. You just don't like this person. So you try to avoid this person, and you don't even realize you're doing it. You don't want to talk to them, you don't want to spend time with them, etc., etc. But what happens is that as you start ready for morning to go to the office, there is a feeling of discomfort that you're going to see this person again. And the more you avoid, remember the word avoidance, the more you avoid communicating with this person or confronting this person, the bigger it gets. Did you know that it can come to an anxiety so advanced that you can actually end up sick or even quit your job? Because it can get so big. This can happen to marriages, for example. You start out, you know, you fall in love, the sex is passionate and everything else, and then he does something or she does something that you don't like. In other words, personality-wise, you have been offended. It hurts you, whatever that was. But you don't want to communicate it to them. You don't want to talk about it. Did you know that from then on, a coldness starts to get in the relationship? There's a wall that starts to build up. You don't even realize it is happening. Within a couple of years, you've become strangers. Okay? Why? Because of the avoidance. We don't communicate, we don't share a feeling, and we keep things inside, protecting the person you think you are. And remember, it's all, the lack of seeing is all based on the fact that you think you are a person. And in truth, you've never been a person and you'll never be a person. You know, the most liberating thing that ever happened to me is when I realized there was no Burt. And it was so relaxing. You see, because then you don't take things personally, and so there's nothing to fight. Now, the reason I'm mentioning it myself is because if I can do it, anybody can. It's very, very simple and very easy, and I'm hoping that this talk, if you keep listening, this kind of seeing will start to emerge slowly. And we'll do an experiment with the many students here. Another avoidance is, we talked about marriage, we talked about office. Could be, for example, what other relationships are there?
Well, relationship with yourself.
Relationship with yourself,
yeah.
Right, okay. So you find that you're very sensitive and you're very conscious of your own person. You know, protecting yourself. But remember that the more you think you are this ego, this person, the more you try to protect it. Now, I'd like you to do an experiment even as you listen. Think of yourself as a person right now, just for a moment. Feel it. I'm a person. Do you feel that little bit of fear coming in automatically? I am separate from others. I am alone. You feel ostracized almost. You see? Because everything, we are all universal. We're all universal. We're all the same. One thing I learned about hypnotherapy is that I didn't get different personalities. I got different bodies, but the problems were always the same. The fears were always the same. They were all universal. You know, always the same. And so now this personal person comes to the point where he is so caught in trying to protect himself because he's afraid of being with people in case they hurt him or they say something that's going to hurt him or her. And so they start being alone because they don't want to talk about it. Others won't understand. This is the feeling. Others won't understand. So you begin to protect yourself. And you end up very, very lonely. Now, being alone is a wonderful thing if you enjoy it. But being lonely is something entirely different. You see? Because it all comes from separation. And there is no separation in anything. What you see is what you are. And what you are is the result of what you're seeing. Okay? What other ways there are that are seeing in every aspect of life. Anyway. Now this happens with whether you're a spiritual seeker or not. The avoidance. Avoidance is also meaning escaping from looking at yourself, from looking at what is happening. You see, and immediately your back is up and you're trying to protect yourself, trying to defend yourself. You see? The other one is called the roller coaster. Now the roller coaster happens to all spiritual seekers. 95% of spiritual seekers go through a roller coaster. There comes a moment when they get an aha moment, you know, and things are very clear. And they say, oh my, you know, I am awake, I can feel it, I've got peace, I feel so energy, you know, and you go to 2 days, 3 days, feeling really clear. And you want to tell the whole world about it. And then what happens? You plummet. And usually to a depression, even despair sometimes. Even to the point of giving up the spiritual search. It can get that bad. Why? Because we made that spiritual experience from an egoic point of view. In other words, we celebrated that experience as me owning it. It is my experience. You see? So you feel kind of proud that you have attained some clarity. And because of that, all of a sudden there's again, like I said, plummeting into depression. And you feel almost desperate because right now everything came crashing down. And you see, not only I've lost it all, but now I'm actually regressing. Well, you have neither lost it nor regressing. But what has actually happened is that you made it personal, and awakening is not personal at all. Awakening is simply the fact that we are all one. The fact that you are, you see. You cannot die because you've never been born. You are universal. The thing is that many people have the belief that they are separate, that separation is so subtle. But, yeah.
I'm just wondering, how am I not experiencing that if I experience that?
If you experience it as having had the ego taking over, and that's a very good point, very good question, if you realize, oh, I became depressed because I made it personal, then, of course, that could be you continuing on with your growth. But the thing is this, that in the depths of depression, this has come about because you thought really that you, as a person, has received that realization. And you forget also that the moment of realization happened because there was no ego at that moment. In other words, there was no person at that moment that it happened. It could have happened with a teacher, It could have happened alone during meditation and your mind is totally quiet. It could have happened in nature. It could have happened through grace, a moment of grace, and all of a sudden you disappeared and it was so good. But then you try to own it as a person. And no wonder depression comes. Depression is depressed, forced down into smallness again. You see? And then it's a crush. At that moment, to actually see that you are doing that, it's rare. Okay? It doesn't matter that it doesn't happen. Yes?
It could be extremely liberating because
If
you
you can see it.
You can see it.
Yes.
Because then you pull your own illusion right out from under you.
Yes.
You actually get to see what you're doing to yourself.
Yeah.
And get to see that.
Now,
that's
this is it. You're both wonderful here. Okay, this is it. Now, if at that point you're able to stand aside and see that it was all because you made yourself into a person owning something that is totally inseparable from everything else. It is a oneness. Okay? But if at that moment, like you were saying, okay, you can actually look at it, it can be extremely liberating. Not only that, but it takes you deeper and higher. Because it is not, see, one time there was somebody asked a Zen master, he says, what is enlightenment? And he answered to the student, he said, enlightenment is when you are not there to be enlightened. And of course he didn't get it, but I guess it was like a koan. But this is the truth, really. Enlightenment means to realize that you are everything, actually. You are life itself, There is no separate individual to receive anything. We know this, right? Okay. So the moment we try to own an experience, then we become small again, even more than before, because now we feel we've lost something. But if you take that step and actually see this, because it's all about seeing, oh wow, then it would be an amazing jump.
It's like you see yourself trying to contain it.
Trying to
make it into something.
That's right, trying to make it into something, trying to contain it, trying to own it, which of course is impossible. Because what we start to realize is that we are. We just are. We're not a small, individualized personality separate from the rest. Okay, what I'd like to do now is the stages of forgiveness, because you see, we talked about forgiveness last satsang, but I had some people say, one man wrote me and he said, Burt, he said, you made the word forgiveness a little difficult to understand. Why didn't you use the word allowing? It's simpler to understand. And you see, allowing is still something you do, even though it's subtle, but it is something you do. Forgiveness is when there is nothing, you realize, and that is the paradox of the forgiveness, is that you realize that there's nothing to do but to see, that there's nothing to forgive. So now what I'd like to do is go through the stages of how it actually happens to come to a point of seeing. Okay, now I'd like you to both visualize the following, okay? Somebody attacks you verbally. Okay, they're attacking you now. Okay, how do you feel? Share anything. How do you feel right now? We're going to take it all the way into seeing, but tell me the moment, like step by step. Right now, how do you feel when you're attacked verbally?
Shocked.
Shocked.
I want to fight back.
You want to fight back. Okay.
I feel maybe I don't want to, if they're saying something to me, I'm actually deeply afraid that there might be some truth in there, and that's the last thing I want to see.
Okay, so that's good. So, okay. So now let's assume that you're doing this and you want to go deeper, you want to see more. Now do you see how we have to go beyond the personality here? But your desire, your drive for truth, your drive for love, because it's all about love, takes you a little deeper. So now let's take it one step further. So now you have seen that you got offended, that you got, okay, the way you did. And at this point, you see that you've given your power away. You know, through getting offended, through wanting to fight back, you know. But now, let's look at the whole picture. Is there truth to it or not, as far as you're concerned? You see? Then you begin to see that, could it be that he is projecting what he is feeling, blaming you, because why does a person attack you and blame you? Why does a person blame you?
Because they're projecting it out.
They're projecting it out. They want to get out of it. You see, there's a guilt, there's a feeling that's been triggered. You might have done something that has triggered that feeling in them, which is a memory, which now makes them enraged. But they are enraged because they want to justify the feeling that they are right. And they're blaming you because they want to throw it out of themselves to somebody else, to say, you see, this actually, or you did this to me, okay? So now you've taken it to the second step. So now you see that he is trying to project, he is trying to get the things out of his system. There is anger. But now take it one step further, and as you think about this person, we're calling him a he at this point, okay? Could it be that he's suffering at the moment? He's suffering, isn't it?
That's why there's the passion to outpour, is because of that.
Exactly, because inside he is suffering. Now, you are, by doing this, you have left yourself behind, your own personality behind, to look at the picture. By doing that, the seeing is getting deeper. Now, you are focusing on him, not by blaming him back, not by fighting him, but by seeing that he is suffering. Now take it deeper. He is suffering. Why is he suffering from this experience, whatever that was?
His need for love.
There's a need for love, isn't there? Do you agree?
Yes.
There's a call for love. He wants to feel okay with himself. He wants to get it out so that he can feel okay. Right? It's a call for love. Beautiful. Okay. So now we see that everything that we do is not because a person is bad, but because we feel somehow justified when we are egoically wronged, because we think there is such a thing as an ego. You see, we try to protect it. And of course, you cannot protect an illusion. So now we've taken it to the point where we see him suffering, and now compassion is coming out of us. And then we see it even deeper, that there is a call for love, really. And it's true. Are you satisfied that he wants love, he wants to feel happy again, he wants to feel okay? Because if at that moment you don't get personally involved and you actually forgive yourself because you realize his pain, you don't even take it personally, and you show him compassion at that moment, he might become disoriented and say, oh my God, you're a nice guy after all.
His anger, or that, is actually a fist against the wall of separation. He actually wants...
So unconsciously he is fighting the separation too.
Yes.
Excellent,
yes.
Excellent. Okay.
Yes.
So now we take it the final step. And the final step is that if all he wants is love, if all he wants is to feel good, if all he wants is because in his true nature, he's good. You see? If I were to ask you right now, why does a person feel bad?
They think there's something wrong with them.
Basically, to see it clearly, that's very good. But a person feels bad because they don't want to feel bad. Feel it out. When a person feels bad because at that moment they don't want to feel bad. Feel it. Because this is seeing very clearly here.
So, is it to strive, to attempt to follow, they'd rather have the illusion of pleasure than the reality of feeling bad, which isn't really a reality.
No, it's not a reality. But the feeling bad is because inside he doesn't want anything bad to happen. So he's protective, he's on guard.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
He already does feel bad.
That very guarding, so that he doesn't feel bad, that very guarding itself, which is the personality, which is the ego, creates the feeling bad because it brings defensiveness.
And separation.
And separation. Okay? Now, this is the final step. Now, this becomes forgiveness. We see that this person is really in his heart wants God, wants love, wants to feel good, but doesn't know how to go about it because he still thinks he is a person. And now, by seeing him as a part of you, not as a person, you actually feel love for him instead of fighting him and going against him. When you can see the beauty beyond the outward seeming ugliness, that's forgiveness. For means you're seeing God before the act, and you give that forness to him. Forgiveness. Jesus in the Course in Miracles said, if you forgive to the point where you can see every face is the face of Christ, you are in heaven. See, it's such a beautiful thing. So this means that if you can look at someone having the face of Christ, not only you don't need to protect yourself, but you yourself begin to see yourself as the very Christ itself, and you see the oneness. The moment you see the oneness, it doesn't matter what they seem to be doing. It doesn't matter what they seem to be doing. In that very act, there is the forgiveness. For, you can spell it F-O-R-E. Beforehand, you are seeing the beauty before and even during the act. And you give that beauty to that person despite what seems to be happening. You see? Forgiveness. So forgiveness is a seeing, it's not an act, it's not an action. You see? So that is the beauty of forgiveness. There's a beautiful quote here from the Course, and I'd like to read it to you. It's kind of struck me. It says, all this beauty will rise to bless your sight as you look upon the world with forgiving eyes. For forgiveness literally transforms vision and lets you see the real world reaching quietly and gently across chaos, removing all illusions that had twisted your perception and fixed it on the past. The smallest leaf now becomes a thing of beauty and wonder, and the blade of grass a sign of God's perfection. I thought it was so beautiful, explaining for.
I just saw that, in what we use the word giving, which isn't ours to give anyway, because it just comes through, it's our nature. Then we receive, but it's not either a receiving either. It's actually the illusion of that wall of any separation.
That's right.
It's neither this nor that. It's,
right.
So therefore, was one.
Forgiving is not doing anything,
That's
but seeing.
Seeing, realizing that.
Yeah. What he said was beautiful. Right. Yeah, and that's what forgiving is. You see? And so when we reach forgiving stage, which is the last stage, that's when transformation starts to happen. Because transformation is the ability to see that everyone you see is you. Wow. It took me 27 years to understand something so simple. But when you start seeing yourself in another because they feel and see exactly like you, the terminology is different, the language is different, the expression is different, but the feeling is always the same. Wanting love, and also needing love, which becomes fear instead of being love. So fear and love is always intermixed. When you think you are a person, you live in fear all the time. Just think of it for a moment. Think of yourself as personal. And the moment you think of yourself as personal, immediately you feel a sense of separation. You see? Immediately there is fear. It's ever so subtle. Someone asked and they said, why is it that when I am with people I am so self-conscious? Because you think you are a separate person. And they said, but everybody feels that. That's right. So awakening is not something that you practice. It's not something that you do. It is something you see, that separation could not exist. You see, it seems to exist because we see the world of objects. Instead of seeing them as expressions of nothingness, expression of is, instead of seeing them as expressions of is, we see the world of objects as actually real itself, instead of from what is coming from. You see what I mean? We are all expression of the is, of the invisible, infinite intelligence. But when you think that you are separate from that, you don't know that your real nature is, then that lack of seeing brings all the suffering known to humanity. You see? And the moment you start seeing, let's go into a bit more about seeing here, how we can apply it in everyday life, because you don't have to try to go deep into it. You just see what actually is beyond the personality, beyond the person, whatever it is. Would you like to share something? Share some way in which we can look as it actually is.
I see how it would have to be contained. Like it would have to be like, for instance, I go to the office, right? So that would have to be a very aware day, right? To know where you're seeing from.
But can't you say you have to be aware day, but can't seeing come to the point where you can make it as an intention of seeing? See, the beautiful thing about seeing is that you're not seeing something that is not there. You're allowing to see beyond what you think is there. You see? So if somebody is shouting, you don't see somebody opening their mouth, making a loud noise, and saying words that might hurt your ego. You don't see that at all, because that is a perception based on memory in the past. But allow yourself to see that where it's coming from a pain, from a discomfort. And immediately as you do that, that very seeing, you don't protect yourself, because when you see the truth of where it's coming from, you don't make it personally anymore. You see exactly what is happening. You see a person shouting. They could be shouting at you, but you don't see it at you, because at that moment you're so innocent. All you see is someone opening their mouth, making a noise, saying words, and it doesn't make sense.
The other way that I was thinking of it is when the outside shouting, let's say, happens, seeing the reaction in this thing you call person over here at home, and seeing where that one is caught and separated. Because as soon as I feel my own separation from life and self, when I see that, then I automatically come back, and when I automatically come back, then there is no threat over there.
Yes.
So it seems like you can do it either way.
Yes, either way, because there's no separation.
Because there's no separation, exactly.
Yes, yes, yeah. So the seeing does not see separation from me and from what is happening, but to see that what is happening has nothing to do with anything real, but it's only where it's happening from, because there's an idea that something has happened to trigger it, and that person has made it real. And it's happening as a chaotic incident, you see?
And if just as if you can clear it out over on this side, then you're seeing them as they are. Because at first, when people do that, they want some ego reaction to push against.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Very good, yes.
And so, when you remove that, then they can actually be more, they can kind of fall out of themselves and be more in touch with the love that is there, as opposed to actually be threatened by being uncovered.
Yes.
Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Yeah,
See, this is, yeah, and that's how healing and forgiveness happens. You see? So this is the seeing. Okay? But we can all, and I'm repeating myself, okay, so that we get it clearer. Seeing is not difficult at all. It is the simplest thing there is, but it requires an innocence from thinking you are a person. In other words, there is an innocence of looking. You see?
From the heart.
From the heart, from the heart. And you look and you find something had happened to me when I was teaching Course in Miracles at one time, and I had a manager, and he was very good. He was getting me appointments, Jen remembers. He was to get me appointments, and we used to have about 60, 70 people attending, you know. Anyway, to make a long story short, one time he introduced me to a woman whom he was in love with, and I wasn't aware of it at the time. And but she became attracted to me, and she started calling me every day, and so we went out. And then I told him about it, and he became livid. And he started calling me names, and he went to the newspapers writing articles against me. He stopped helping me. He called everybody. I lost all the clients because he said, I am a womanizer, and I am bad, and I am fake, and I am this, and I am that. This is all true, right? How long ago was this?
25 years.
About 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and honestly, as God is my judge, he did all that, and I forgave him immediately. And some people who believed in me and who were devoted to me, which were very few, they defended me. And they couldn't understand how it didn't affect me. They couldn't understand why it didn't bother me. As a matter of fact, after a while I thought, well, I'll take a break and go out with this girl. We went to Hawaii until it kind of cooled off. But I completely forgot, because I used to look at him shouting, livid, making this, and the more he saw that it didn't affect me, the wilder he became so bad that he actually became sick. He himself became sick out of all this. So what I'm trying to say here, pardon me for giving you such a personal example, because I'm talking about non-personal here. But when you don't see yourself as a person that needs protection, that needs defense, and you forgive, that very forgiveness is one of the greatest blessings known to humanity, because it opens up a whole new world. And when I came back from Hawaii, you know, I had wonderful things start happening again, you see. Honestly, I never worried about it. Because I knew, first of all, that I didn't do anything. I didn't need to protect myself, and I didn't want to hurt him by, you know, people says, we should sue him, we should do this, for losing business and all that. I said, no. I totally forgave. And that forgiveness was so beautiful, you see. So anyway, where do we go from here? So forgiveness is seeing very, very clearly that what a person does is what a person is doing because that's their world, that's their perception, that's their judgments. Yeah.
So I would guess that would be the same thing as forgiving yourself as it would be to forgive others.
Well, forgiveness is always total, you see, because there is no separation. So
no, but I guess it seems that it would be easier to see that when another is involved, but when it's just yourself. Well, what you're saying is the same thing.
yes, it comes to the, yeah, you see, when you start to see there is no them and you anymore,
That's right.
you know, and so there is no separation. Now, it's true that forgiving yourself is a little harder than forgiving another, but it's only because the personality is still there. When I talk about personality, it doesn't mean you don't have a personality anymore. It means you are not a separate individual, you see, anymore. So therefore there's nothing to protect, you see. And so when you see that, then the forgiveness becomes total of yourself and another. Because there is nothing to forgive, you simply see that God has gone crazy right now in that form. Because everybody is God, right? Okay, now God doesn't go crazy, but a person forgets that they are beautiful beings, you see? And because they don't know, they defend who they think they are. That very defense becomes their pain. And it triggers, you know, it triggers them where it hits them most in their childhood, in their upbringing, etc., etc. So anyway, I hope that at this point you've become very clear about what forgiveness really is. And the key to transformation is seeing. You are what you see.